top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, it appears to be official. Kim Klavel versus Yesenia Gomez for the WBC title has an official fight date. March 11th this year, Casino de Montreal. These two are going to be locking horns.
My feelings on the fight haven't changed.
I like Kim Klavel to win the fight. I like Kim Klavel to win by way of a points decision in Montreal. I think the judges will favor the hometown fighter. That's just the way it is. Those are the breaks.
That's if the fight is close.
If the rounds are close, if the fight is close, Kim Klavel may get consideration from the judges.
I'm not saying she has to rob Yesenia Gomez.
Not trying to imply that Kim Klavel can't win this thing fair and square. I believe she can. I'm just saying that home field advantage is a real thing, and you guys out there need to acknowledge that.
This is a light flyweight contest.
Light flyweight. Yesenia Gomez of Mexico holds the WBC. Jessica Bopp of Argentina holds the WBA, and
WBO title's vacant.
We talked about that here on the channel. The WBO put the former WBO champion at this weight, Senicia Estrada, on the spot.
Because she was in possession of 2 world titles at 2 different weights.
The WBA at minimum weight and WBO at light flyweight. WBO, customarily, they don't let fighters do that. They don't let a fighter simultaneously campaign at 2 different weights whilst being in possession of 2 different alphabet titles. They asked Senicia Estrada to show cause why she should be allowed to hold on to that WBO title while she's downstairs at minimum weight.
And I guess they made their decision because now the WBO title's listed as being vacant.
It's up for grabs. Perhaps Jessica Bopp will pick it up. Perhaps the winner of Yesenia Gomez versus Kim Klavel will pick it up. Or they'll incorporate that newly vacated title into their title fight, their own title fight. Perhaps they can petition the WBO. Jessica Bopp, the reigning WBA light flyweight champion, she has very recently expressed an interest in facing Kim Klavel, provided that Kim makes it through the Yesenia Gomez fight. And you get the sense that Jessica, like myself, she expects that Kim should win the fight. She expects that Kim Klavel should win against Yesenia Gomez in March.
Jessica probably figures she'll get paid more for fighting Kim than she would for fighting Yesenia.
Because I don't recall Jessica Bopp ever expressing an interest in facing Yesenia, the way she is right now in facing Kim Klavel, the potential winner of March's upcoming WBC title fight.
I'm not saying she never did, I'm just saying that I didn't see it.
And with the WBO title being vacant, in the absence of Senicia Estrada at this weight class, now shifting her focus to the minimum weight division and unifying downstairs. With this,
Jessica becomes this division's apex predator.
She's already a more experienced champion than Yesenia Gomez, more experienced than Evelyn Bermudez.
She's a bigger puncher, too.
Always been a handful. A pound-for-pound alum. Anybody who knows anything about these weights knows that Jessica Bopp is a force to be reckoned with, even now that she's an aging fighter. Just some things to consider as a title potentially changes hands in March.
Jessica Bopp is going to be looking for the winner of that fight.
In men's lightweight news, George Kambosos eyes return in May. Big fight in Australian Stadium. According to Kambosos, his next fight is being targeted for a date in May. My next fight is going to be in May. May is going to be a great time. The build-up, the name, there's going to be the build-up. My entire career has been a hard road. There's never been an easy option for me. I've always had to grind, Kambosos told Fox Sports. We've really got to let Australia know what's going on and how big this fight will be. This will be the biggest fight in Australian history. It'll be a stadium fight in Sydney or Melbourne. We're in negotiations with both, and it'll be exciting. I wouldn't be real to the crowd if I told them I'm coming back for an easy fight. What for? I'm coming for the big names. We're already in negotiations with everybody.
Though he won't be facing everybody in May, he can only fight one of these guys at a time.
The names of Heaven Daney, Vasyl Lomachenko, and Ryan Gersha were mentioned as potential candidates. I sincerely doubt it'll be Ryan Gersha that George faces in May. It really does come down to Devin Haney and Vasyl Lomachenko, and based on George's verbiage, that it'll be the biggest fight in Australian boxing, the biggest fight in Australian boxing history, a stadium fight.
Gervonta Davis was mentioned also, but what are the odds that he goes to Australia?
From the moment that George Kambosos Jr. won those belts, he made it clear that he wanted to have a hometown fight in his native Australia. And we all know that Gervonta Davis, his handlers, they think he's king shit. He's not going to travel for anybody, regardless of how many belts they've got. So in all likelihood, Gervonta's not actually in the running.
Well, what if the WBA orders the fight?
Gervonta Davis is currently in possession of a secondary title, the secondary title to George's primary title. And it's conceivable that at some point in the near future,
At some point, that fight might get ordered.
though even if it does, do you honestly think that's going to result in the fight getting done? It's either Gervonta Davis travels to Australia, which isn't likely, or they cough up the money.
They pool the money together to pay George the way George wants to get paid.
It's one or the other, and you guys heard what Leonard Ellerbe said a couple of weeks ago in reference to pooling the money together for a Davis versus Haney fight.
You just mentioned Haney, for example. Devin Haney makes a lot of money, but would we pay him that kind of money that he's making? Absolutely not.
If that's the stance he's taking in reference to a Devin Haney fight, what kind of stance do you think he's going to take for a George Kambosos fight?
Gervonta Davis ain't in the running, man.
And neither is Ryan Garcia. Ryan's not going to travel to Australia, and I don't see Golden Boy Promotions pooling the funds together to bring George Kambosos back to America. I don't see that happening either.
The two front runners for the fight are Devin Haney and Vasyl Lomachenko.
And based on George Kambosos' verbiage, that it's a stadium fight, that it could be the biggest fight in Australian history, you get the sense that there's a historical element to the fight, what could be the fight in May between Vasyl Lomachenko and Devin Haney. Now, there's not a lot of history tied to a George Kambosos versus Vasyl Lomachenko fight, but there is some history tacked on to a Devin Haney fight, because a Devin Haney fight would be for the undisputed lightweight championship. Whether you guys like it or not, Devin Haney is in possession of the WBC world title, the version of the title you need to call yourself an undisputed champion.
The version of the title that Canelo Alvarez made sure to pick up en route to becoming an undisputed champion at super middleweight.
Canelo Alvarez was already the WBC's inaugural WBC franchise champion, the first of his kind, and he still made sure to pick up that WBC world title.
Well, he knows that's the one you need.
In order to call yourself a bona fide undisputed champion, that's the one you've got to pick up, not some franchise designation. And that's the version of the title that Devin Haney is in possession of at lightweight.
Now, I don't have a preference. I like both of those fights.
I like a Devin Haney versus George Kambosos Jr. fight about as much as I like a Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight. I could go for either one. It's all a question of which happens first. And based on George's verbiage,
I think they might do the undisputed title fight in May.
I don't know how far along they are in negotiations for that fight, but what we do know is that an order from the WBO ordering George to face Vasyl Lomachenko, who could very well be named his mandatory challenger, it being that Vasyl Lomachenko is ranked as the #1 contender by way of the WBO. Such an order hasn't come down
So
yet.
there's still time for George and Devin to do the fight.
But if they're going to do the fight, they've got to work fast, because they are working on the clock. It's only a matter of time before that order comes down, and if it does, that'll get in the way of their fight.
It could. In any event, we'll see what happens. We'll see who he ends up fighting.
You know what I can't believe? That AJ has gone and give Ukraine all the heavyweight belts back after all my hard work of relieving them. You big useless dosser. You've let a little steroid man come up from middleweight and set about you and take all your belts. But it's going to have to take a real British Lancaster bomber like me to go and relieve the useless little steadhead of the belts and get them back to Britain. You useless dossers. Honestly, bring them to me. The Gypsy King, bring them to me. And I'll put them into place. I'll relieve them of the belts again.
That's right, folks. Now Tyson Fury has taken to accusing Alexander Usyk, this division's unified champion, of being a steroid cheat, a steroid abuser. And I don't actually know what he's referencing. I don't know that something might have happened in the amateurs to where Usyk might have tested positive for a banned substance. I don't know. I just know as a professional, he hasn't popped for any banned substances, whereas Tyson Fury has, which is what makes this so bizarre. Tyson Fury is in no position to cast judgment or an air of suspicion over any other fighter out there in reference to banned substances when he's the one who tested positive for a banned substance, nandrolone.
You guys remember the wild boar story?
The story where Tyson Fury claimed to have ingested some wild boar, and perhaps that's where the nandrolone came from. The wild boar having come from Martin Carefoot.
Martin has since come forward saying it's all a sham.
This is all in reference to the fight that Tyson Fury had years ago with Christian Hammer. Test samples that were taken between February and March of 2015, test samples that tested positive for the banned substance nandrolone that Tyson Fury claimed came from a wild boar he ingested, a wild boar that he got from Martin Carefoot. Martin Carefoot, who has since come forward saying he doesn't farm wild boar.
There are enough discrepancies associated with this story that are cause for suspicion.
Enough discrepancies that make Tyson Fury's version of events hard to believe, so much so that him here today in 2022 accusing anyone else of ingesting banned substances for a competitive edge is cringeworthy, to say the least. Tyson Fury is in no position to talk. And listen, I'm not naive. I know there are that many more guys out there on banned substances and they just haven't been caught yet, but the fact still remains. Tyson Fury,
He's in no position to talk.
him least of all, when you actually got popped for a banned substance and Alexander Usyk didn't. Once again, I'm not naive. There were a lot of guys out there that got popped for a lot of different drugs. Luis Ortiz got popped 2 times for 2 banned substances. So did Lucas Brown, and so did Alexander Povetkin. Dillian White had an adverse finding. Tyson Fury was found to have had nandrolone in his system.
I'm not naive. There are a lot of guys on a lot of fucking drugs.
And those are just the ones we know about. Those are just the ones that actually got caught, like Jarrell Miller, who had 3 different banned substances in his system. Jean Pascal, he very recently had 4.
It's not even the guys that are using banned substances that I'm talking about.
It's going to sound a bit jaded and a bit cynical, but a lot of these guys are on something, and these are just the ones that we know about. These are just the ones that got caught.
So if a lot of these guys are on something and Tyson Fury knows it, why is he making light of it?
Comprendo, friendo.
Let's say Tyson Fury's onto something. Let's say he's telling the truth. Let's say he's privy to information and news that hasn't broke yet. Let's say that Alexander Usyk actually did take a banned substance. Well, that doesn't make him any different from you. You got caught with nandrolone in your system.
Shouldn't throw stones in a glass house.
What the hell does this guy think he is, Mother Teresa? He thinks he's squeaky clean. He can point fingers and cast judgment over banned substances when he himself tested positive for a banned substance? Tyson Fury continues to be a bit of a nonsensical character, often contradicting himself.
He's a walking, talking, boxing contradiction.
And anyone familiar with him knows that. What exactly is the point of highlighting potential pet use and banned substances when you actually got caught with a banned substance in your system?
What, you're trying to make him out to be the bad guy?
So what's that make you? Because at most, if your story rings true, if there's actually truth to it, that just makes that guy no better than you are.
All right, Dr. Fauci?
At minimum, this lets us know that Tyson Fury has the winner of that fight on the brain, regardless of who the winner is, Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk. At minimum, this lets us know what kind of headspace Tyson Fury's in. He's waiting for the winner of that fight to emerge. That fight that doesn't have an official fight date just yet, though it's all in the works. In reference to that fight, that potential fight, I should say, that potential matchup between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk later on this year for what could very well be the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, Deontay Wilder's trainer, Malik Scotch, on Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. I believe the Fury that fought Vladimir Klitschko gives Usyk all kinds of fits. The movement, the reflexes. This Fury right now, Usyk would beat. This Fury is easier to hit than any Fury before. And you gotta think about that. The version of Tyson Fury that Malik Scotch and Deontay Wilder prepared for in that trilogy fight, that third fight, that was a Tyson Fury they anticipated would be coming forward, being the aggressor, attempting to impose his size and weight on Deontay Wilder. That's the Tyson Fury they faced, and that isn't the Tyson Fury that Vladimir Klitschko faced. It's not, but who says that Tyson Fury's...
That his game plan is cut and dry like that.
I don't disagree with Malik Scotch's scouting report that today's Tyson Fury, at least the one we saw the last 2 times, I don't disagree that he's easier to hit, but he is easier to hit because he's being the aggressor. He's the guy on his front foot coming forward.
That's what makes him easier to hit.
And it's conceivable that he might employ a similar strategy on Alexander Usyk, who has not the size, the stature, and the wingspan of an Anthony Joshua, a Deontay Wilder, certainly not a Tyson Fury.
Yeah, it's possible Tyson Fury comes forward on him too.
But even if he is coming forward, and even if he is easier to hit coming forward than he is moving backwards or laterally, even if that rings true, does Alexander Usyk have the firepower to hurt Tyson Fury, to capitalize on a more hittable Tyson Fury than the Tyson Fury of old? That's the question. A lot of people saw that Joshua fight, and what they saw was that Alexander Usyk came very close to stopping Anthony Joshua, but that wasn't necessarily through strength of arms. That was through exhaustion.
Usyk ain't got one-hitter quitter power.
He didn't before as a cruiserweight, and he doesn't have it now as a heavyweight. If he came very very close to stopping Anthony Joshua, it's because
Usyk's got a great gas tank and he can make you tired.
he can weigh you down. And it's not so obvious in the beginning. It's not so immediately apparent in the early goings of a match. But as a match progresses...
You remember that Tony Bellew was having a lot of success against him early.
looking pretty fucking good out there until he got tired and he got stopped.
And that's not by accident, that's by design. Usyk makes these guys tired.
So I reiterate, it's not through strength of arms that Alexander Usyk came close to stopping Anthony Joshua. He wore down his gas tank round after round. The thing about Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury has great powers of recovery, a good beard, and a great gas tank. How many times have you actually seen Tyson Fury exhausted? How many times have you actually seen him tired, fatigued?
Malik Scotch says today's Fury is more hittable.
Maybe he's right. Maybe today's Fury is more hittable, but he's more hittable because he's become more of a pressure guy, imposing his size and weight on his opponents. More recently, his opponent has been Deontay Wilder, who he jabbed and leaned on and wrestled and moved him around that ring.
Don't disagree that today's Fury is more hittable. I just question what difference that makes in a Usyk fight.
Usyk ain't got one hit a quitter power drop Fury the same way that Deontay Wilder did, I don't think, off a big right hand, a few big right hands in their trilogy. He ain't got that kind of stopping power.
Tell you, it's one hell of a matchup if they get it over the line.
Whenever this subject is broached, a lot of time is spent pondering, pontificating as to how Tyson Fury will approach the fight. How will he decide to fight Alexander Usyk? And most people seem to agree that he's going to use his size, his weight, to apply pressure. That he's not going to sit there and have a chess match with the smaller man, because that chess match keeps the smaller man in the fight. That's the mistake that Anthony Joshua made.
They figure that Fury's going to try to run him over.
That is, if Anthony Joshua doesn't end up running over him in the rematch. If Anthony Joshua doesn't run him over the second time out. What most people figure is that Tyson Fury will apply a lot of pressure on the naturally smaller man to wear him down and take him out.
What I don't see people talking about is what Usyk's going to do.
It's a thought that I struggle with myself. If Tyson Fury decides to take a more aggressive approach, how will Alexander Usyk deal with it?